Some startups go up, others go down. Welcome to GeekWire's Elevator Pitch, where 3 entrepreneurs pitch their businesses in the 32 seconds it takes to get to the top of Seattle's historic Smith Tower. Over the course of 4 episodes, we'll narrow the field from a dozen entrepreneurs to one winner. In this episode of Elevator Pitch, presented by PACCAR, we'll hear from 3 startup founders as they pitch their emerging businesses to our panel of leading investors and entrepreneurs. Let's meet our judges. T.A. McCann, a serial software entrepreneur, investor, and professional sailor who sold his last company to Google and counts Rival IQ and more than a half dozen other startups to his name. Heather Redman, power broker and former Getty Images executive who cuts deals as managing director of venture capital firm Flying Fish Partners. Kyle Quinn, the CTO of PACCAR, who is leading the technology strategy for the innovative truck manufacturer. The clock is ticking. Jump on board and ride with us on the elevator pitch and find out which entrepreneur has what it takes to make it to the top.
I'm Maria Colacurcio, CEO of Syndio.
Welcome to Smith Tower.
Syndio is committed to eradicating unlawful pay disparities in the workplace. We're the only SaaS company licensing data science-powered software to help companies analyze and resolve pay gaps due to gender or race, and stay in compliance over time. Current solutions are inadequate. That's why studies show the pay gap is set to stick around for the next 200 years. Unacceptable. Pay equity is important for companies, and not just because it reduces legal risk. It also helps with retention and employee engagement. This problem is 100% solvable, and Syndio can solve it today. Thank you. Hi, I'm Maria Colacurcio, CEO of Syndio.
Who are your target customers?
Our target customers are really any companies with 250 employees or more.
And what does the solution actually do for them?
Sure, so what it does for them is it allows them to do immediate pay equity analyses. So the way it works today, typically companies are forced into an old model of going to outside counsel and they subcontract with a labor economist. It takes weeks, if not months, to get back a single pay equity analysis. So with our product, customers can run an analysis immediately, then they can add the legitimate job-related factors like controls, for example, tenure, education, location, things that they say impact pay. They can see whether that's true, and then they can see the problems underneath the surface. So if you have a tenure problem and you're actually not paying people based on tenure, you can see it, you can solve it with budget, you can solve it by fixing the underlying practices. Then you can stay in compliance over time.
How is machine learning applied?
Sure, great question. So what we do is we analyze the degree to which pay is a factor by first predicting pay net of gender. So assuming nobody has gender, and then we compare actual pay with predicted pay. And if there's a problem between groups, between men and women, for example, and that problem is statistically significant, the difference is significant, you have a pay equity issue.
So you mentioned that the customer is allowed to make adjustments to the model based on what they believe to be the non-illegal factors.
Exactly.
As opposed to the current system where you're basically going through your outside counsel to contract with someone who's supposedly impartial and has the PhD behind their name. So how do you deal with that? Because you've got someone who's trying to prove that they're fair, and not only to avoid legal liability, but because most people do feel like they're doing the right thing. This is not out of ill intent. This is out of unintentional bias.
Unconscious bias.
Unconscious bias. Yeah. So how do you deal with that factor of now suddenly you've got the fox minding the hen house?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the current model really perpetuates exactly what you said, maintain and explain. So let's squint at the data, let's add as many controls as we can to make it work for us, to show that we do not have a pay equity issue. What we do is we encourage companies to find and fix. We go in there and we say, all right, what are your disciplined, documented, legitimate, job-related factors? And we can predict whether it's actually true that they predict pay.
Once a company understands they have a problem, presumably they put in place certain fixes. How do you maintain a good customer relationship with them? Once they have the knowledge, why do they need you anymore?
Sure, so there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, pay equity is not a one and done issue. So again, the old model really perpetuates once a year, put it on the shelf, never look at it again. But think about today's companies, how quickly they evolve. They're buying other companies, they're doing reorgs, they're doing layoffs or hiring sprees. So we really encourage our clients to be doing pay equity analyses in an ongoing way, and software allows them to do that. So they're looking at equity constantly. As the organization shifts and groups change, you've got to do more analyses in order to stay up on that.
Talk a little bit about the data that you're acquiring as part of this.
Sure, absolutely. So we have about 1 million employees on our platform right now. And as you can imagine, with every new employee, we get more information, and we have access to anonymous derived data. So obviously not the data from the customer's perspective and seeing all the bits and pieces, but the anonymous derived data. But that gives us a lot of insight as to what's happening with pay. We also have a lot on our roadmap that takes advantage of the derived anonymous data and allows us to do even more predictively to figure out how to promote fairness in other elements of the organizations.
You have a million profiles or 1 million active users or companies that have a total of 1 million employees on the platform?
Yeah, so the number of...
Pro tip, always mention that in an elevator pitch.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there's 1 million employees on the platform. So that's composed of about 50 to 60 enterprise companies, our customers right now.
What's your commercial approach? How do you get paid for what you do?
Sure. So we license the software, and we license it, on average, our customers purchase in 24-month licenses, but we do offer as low, as few as 12-month licenses. So it's anywhere from 1 to 3 years, and then the pricing is based on how big the company is.
What % of your revenue is software revenue versus service or consulting revenue?
It's almost 100% software.
So you bundle that sort of advice into the software spend?
Yes.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here today.
Sure, thank
Great
you.
job.
Yeah, very
Great
good.
job. Great company.
Gosh,
So-
I love that idea,
Yeah.
except for you have to draw out that she has 50 or 60 enterprise customers and 1 million people on the platform?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No, that was a shocker, sort of a jaw dropper there of like, okay, bury the lead.
But I thought it was interesting that she talked about the use case of the recruiting.
Yes.
So if you have that recruiting in real time and you think about, we looked at this salary band, we made an offer to this person, it fell in or out of the salary band.
Yeah.
Now you probably have a foundation for real-time machine learning.
Right.
But you didn't expand on that quite enough to know whether that's just a future state or whether that's a current state.
Yeah.
But that's a company that at an early stage has enough data to actually do something meaningful with it.
A lot of places for this company to go, and clearly a lot of people that would like to coach them.
Hi, I'm Jon Herlocker, CEO and President of Tignous.
Welcome to Smith Tower.
IoT sensors have generated a tidal wave of ambiguous data, making it harder for operators to diagnose and optimize systems. Machine learning has been touted as a solution, but it isn't good at understanding which sensor warnings are meaningful. Tignous has integrated a physics-based model with AI and ML. Our software automatically ingests complex site schematics and delivers real-time insights. Our proprietary solution locates malfunctioning components, identifies root cause, and provides clear visibility into how to solve the problem. Hi, I'm Jon Herlocker. I'm CEO of Tignous.
Talk to us about your traction with customers, revenue, et cetera.
That's right. So we're pretty early stage, but what I can say is that we are now monitoring hundreds of installations globally, including many of the world's largest chiller plants. And so these are chiller plants for large-scale heating, ventilation, and cooling. Think hospitals, universities, small cities, that kind of stuff.
What's a good use case of that, how the chiller scenario?
Yeah, so where we really come in is it's not so much about identifying obvious problems. If the chiller shut down, people know, right? So we really focus on identifying sort of the hidden failures. So it's sort of things that are starting to fail, things that have failed but maybe are not affecting downtime but have reduced the sort of reliability of the system. Also, identifying sensor problems. all these things that are very hard to detect that fail kind of silently, but either increase the risk of failure or reduce the efficiency of the system. That's kind of where we're focused today.
Do you add sensors to the system, or do you try to use the sensors that are there?
So part of our magic is that we work with what you got, right? Which is usually terrible in many cases. And so we'll literally take a piping and instrumentation diagram from you, and we'll take a dump from your historian or your distributed control system, and we'll map it in, we'll create this sort of digital twin, and we'll use our physics models to figure out what actually can we do given the sensors that you have, right? And the system that you have and the configuration that you have and the way that you happen to be operating it today, right? And so we may in some cases we'll come back and say we can't do anything, but for the most part we focus on systems that are large enough that have control systems that are making decisions based on sensors, and so they at least have some kind of sensors to make those decisions on, and so at a minimum we can provide value based on that.
So we've looked at quite a few businesses that, not exactly like yours,
Sure.
but similar ideas of let's solve these complex problems where there's a lot of unstructured data out there
That's right.
in the wild that ought to be useful but really isn't because nobody can figure out how to interpret it
Right.
cost effectively. The one thing that we have stubbed our toe on over and over again is a very large customization or services component
Right.
to the engagement.
That's right.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, in some sense, that's our magic. So classic example, large pharmaceutical manufacturer came to us, right? And they said, hey, we really want to up-level our reliability, our efficiency. Like, can you help us with that? Here's our piping and instrumentation diagram. Here's like a dump from our historian. And then I think 2 days later, we had their system modeled. They could see it visually rendered in our thing. We were showing them recommendations of things that go wrong. And it blew their mind, right? They basically said, we thought we'd have to pay to get to the point where we saw some results. We didn't expect to get it 2 days after we sent you an email, right? And so we can get to that first level of value with almost zero professional services.
Can you apply this solution beyond an HVAC system?
We've had good success in HVAC, and we're going to continue to grow that. But we are currently engaged in a big project to identify the next sort of one or two verticals. We need to stay really focused at this stage in our business, but and so literally in the next month we're going to pick another major vertical, like oil and gas or transportation or something. It's going to be our next sort of expansion wave.
Congratulations on everything you've achieved so far, and thank you so much for being here. We really
you.
appreciate it.
I like the category, but I could just never get my head around what is the use case, and it was very frustrating to not be able to pick, and I wanted him in that 14 chiller scenario to really talk through what were they monitoring, what were they learning, what suggestions did they make, and every time you'd start to push into that, it would just move to a different scenario, the pharmaceutical one or something else. So I really
It did bounce a little bit.
I never really quite understood the use case well enough to make a good judgment.
Well, and I think what's happened is that they are in some sense struggling with the sales cycle and maybe product market fit.
There is about a dozen very similar to this in Silicon Valley that are all chasing different types of systems and analyzing, and then collecting the data and assigning machine learning to try to get to predictive faults. And most of them are beginning to narrow in their focus and point at a particular type of system, like a paint system or a mechanical system or a factory system.
This team is a very good team.
Are they?
And got incredible backers. So they have, I think, the raw materials to successfully do something. And so maybe the question is, what is the something?
Hi, I'm James. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AdaptiLab.
Welcome to Smith Tower.
AdaptiLab grows machine learning teams from hiring to productivity. Machine learning is the most hotly demanded technology in industry today, but companies are still struggling to adapt. On average, it costs a company $180,000 to hire a single machine learning engineer. AdaptiLab's flagship product is a technical screening tool that allows companies to automatically assess candidates on all of the core machine learning and data science competencies, whereas existing solutions only test software engineering. Our product is used at fast-growing tech companies like HighSpot and also enterprise giants like Experian. Hi, I'm James, CEO and co-founder of AdaptiLab.
Talk to us a little bit about where you are on pricing and how your go-to-market looks today.
Yeah, so we have a monthly subscription SaaS model right now because we sell direct to customers. In terms of our initial traction, we have the paying customers with Experian and HighSpot that I mentioned. We've also done pilots with companies like Zillow and Pinterest and BCG in the Seattle area, and we're in the process of going through the sales cycle with them.
What's the biggest barrier to sales? What's the biggest question you get when you're trying to get this product sold into a company such as Zillow?
Yeah, typically there's two types of companies that are trying to adopt machine learning. They're the ones that don't have much machine learning expertise. And in that kind of sales cycle, you spend some time actually educating them on why the product is useful for standardizing your machine learning interview process. In the other case, there are companies where there are hiring managers that actually do know how to evaluate the talent, but they don't have the engineering resources to do so. And then you just prove the value proposition of being able to reclaim their engineering time significantly by using an automated technical screen through the technical funnel.
How do you quantify value for the customers?
A couple of ways. Specifically, we're actually working with companies on getting post-hire success data as well. So that's obviously the first way to really track whether or not a candidate that went through our process is successful. But from the actual value proposition side, at the sales point, we can also reclaim their engineering time in particular. So the amount of engineering hours saved by using our product rather than having your actual machine learning engineers and data scientists evaluate candidates.
How long does it take you to turn around the assessment?
So it's fully automatically graded, so instantaneously.
Do the engineers who are hiring trust the system well enough? I mean, are you actually seeing a reduction in the amount of time they spend in the hiring process?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So we actually sit at two parts in the technical process. The first is we actually will evaluate all candidates that apply to the company and pass their initial resume screen with our preliminary technical interview screen. And that's the fully automatically graded portion. That allows companies to immediately evaluate more candidates than they currently are doing because they don't have to have a machine learning engineer do that initial phone call at each point. We also sit later on, right before the on-site, we prepare a technical take-home project with the actual data set that's customized to the company's domain. And that provides a lot of signal, not just on their technical competency, but also their fit for the company's skill set.
How do the candidates feel about the product?
Very positively, actually. We put a very heavy focus when we built the initial candidate environment on the UX experience for the candidate. Both myself and my co-founder were machine learning engineers by training, so we've gone through that process.
So you mentioned on your roadmap that you're going to, this is sort of your initial product, and then you're going to go into some other things that are further upstream, including training and upskilling. That's a really crowded space. Why do you guys have an advantage there?
Yeah, specifically, we will only expand to the training and education market when we've already established this flow of companies and candidates going through the interview process. And because of that, we know the exact competencies that candidates are weak at and what they need to be improved on based on what companies have hired them, because we're also interviewing for those companies. So we think we can actually drastically accelerate the onboarding process by just up-leveling them on the particular competencies that the company cares about.
How many people have used the product already in terms of companies and then candidates?
In terms of companies, we've had about 13 pilots in total. In candidates, we've had over 1,000 candidates go through the actual UI and UX experience of working on the online test.
Well, thank you so much, James. Hats off for solving a problem that pretty much every one of my portfolio companies has. So keep up the good work. We really appreciate your being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, yeah, I've looked at James for a while in this company. I mean, I really like the category. I like what they're trying to do. I think it's a big and growing market. The challenge with that pitch was there is a lot of traction there, but I had to draw it out of him. Mm-hmm. And I think there's probably some really interesting things they're learning with 1,000 candidates having gone through the system and presumably more that he didn't really bring to us. Yeah. That theoretically would be brought out in a sales pitch to other customers.
Well, and you made this point with Maria's pitch as well, and I think it's worth pausing on this because this show is partly for the benefit of people who are starting companies and raising capital and how do you pitch in general, and these folks are great being examples and guinea pigs. but that showing of customer traction, whether you're running a multi-billion-dollar company or whether you're running a company that's still running pilots and doesn't even have paying customers, really understanding that customer traction piece for an investor is extremely valuable. Talking about what you've learned in your journey thus far about the customer pain point is also extremely important, because that really demonstrates your domain expertise, which again is something that we don't have.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you should assume
They
that
should
we're
be
ignorant,
developing that
right?
domain expertise as they
yeah.
go.
And that will convince us as
Right.
well, because if we think you're an expert in this space, and it could be that you start out as an expert, or it could be that you become an expert because you've deeply immersed yourself in it, we will love that.
James, a couple things we really liked about your pitch is the category that you're in. I mean, certainly this is a big problem today and can continue to be another problem. A couple of good enterprise customer names along the way. Some things where we think it could have been improved upon was really around business value. So what are people really quantifying? How would they think about ROI? What are you charging them for? And that would be part of the sales process. As well as you've had 1,000 candidates go through it, what are you learning? What are you learning from those candidates? What are the deficiencies? What are the strengths or weaknesses? And how might that be applied in the product going forward?
John, thought a couple of really positive things about your pitch. Definitely the aspect of being able to turn around a digital twin is powerful. Doing that quickly is something that could be leveraged and maybe a really important part of your business plan. A couple of things that you should work on is really trying to bring to life the specifics around what you learned in a particular analysis with a customer. And then the second thing is to stay focused on your market. Really work to be the best in that market.
Maria, I get to give you some feedback. Terrific presentation. We were super impressed, as you could tell by some of our comments, with the traction that you've achieved in the market, and very interested in how that got done so quickly and so well. We also think you could have highlighted you a bit more. As we understand it, you are not the founder of the company, but have come on as CEO, and you have an amazing track record at Smartsheet. And therefore the bona fides to really scale something like this, in the future. The thing that I think you also probably picked up on our earlier comments that we thought you could have done better, or at least should think about, is selling this less from a cost avoidance or liability avoidance or even fairness standpoint, and selling it more as how do you win in the marketplace. If you want your company to be a giant, you need to conquer this problem and figure out how to really have access to the best in the employment pool, regardless of background, gender, race, whatever. And you hold the key to that in part, and so you need to emphasize that more and make this a competitive advantage for every company as opposed to cost avoidance or liability avoidance. Yeah. You all did a great job. This was a super strong cohort of companies. We expect great things out of all of you, so it was a tough decision, but we are going to name Syndio as the winner of this competition.
The judges had great feedback, and I think the most important thing I'll take away is the suggestion that we lead with our results. We have really great business results, even though we're pretty early, and we've got to be talking about that more.
This week's winner advances to the finals, pitching live on stage in front of 1,000 tech and business leaders at the 2019 GeekWire Summit on October 9th. Check out all of this season's episodes at geekwire.com/elevatorpitch.